Okay, and we're back. We're here with René Moya, who is here to talk about Yes on Ballot Proposition 21. Welcome, René. Can you tell us a little bit
Good
about
morning.
it?
Sure. Proposition 21 is a fairly simple measure. It would return the power to local communities to decide for themselves if they would like to have rent control. Our initiative is truly about returning that power to local communities. It's a form of local control. We know that statewide we are facing a housing crisis. That housing crisis looks like over half of renters in our state currently having unaffordable rents. And in fact, something like 30% of all renters in the state of California, 30% of the 17 million renters of California are currently severely rent burdened, according to federal guidelines. That is a statistic from the Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard. All of these issues, of course, are in particular kind of very impactful or impacting particularly vulnerable communities. We know, for example, that senior citizens, low-income senior citizens, 3/4 of those folks are severely impacted or rent-burdened folks. That means that they, again, are paying too much money on their rent. And the question, of course, is, what is causing this? And the idea is very simple. Frankly put, too many people are paying too much money on their rent, and we need to be able to do something about that. But before I continue talking about the idea of rent and why we need more tools in the arsenal of our local communities, we also should mention the fact that, of course, California is the capital of homelessness. 27% of all homeless people in the United States live here in the state of California. And of course, we also know that the driving factors of homelessness statewide, they are issues of economic emergencies, evictions, and inability to keep up with the rent, and job loss. Those are the 4 driving factors that a study here in LA County, where I live, what they found were the reasons that people ended up homeless. And so it should be no surprise that as our cities become more unaffordable, that we are going to see not just a growth in homelessness, but a fairly severe acceleration in homelessness. As an example, we have 2 studies that were prepared by Zillow, the real estate firm, 2 different studies that were done about 2 years ago. One of them, one that was actually quite famous, it was definitely reported on in the media at the time, showed that for every 5% increase in the rent in the LA area, an additional 2,000 people would become homeless. Another report that Zillow released within months of that report, I think, is even more profound in its statement of the problem of housing affordability and how it connects to homelessness. That study found that whenever the rent as part of, or rather when average rents were at 22% of the average income of a community, then homelessness started growing. And then when rents hit 32% of a community's average income, then homelessness not only started growing, it was accelerating quite dramatically. That study found that out of 20 urban centers in California that they looked at, 18 of them were beyond the 22% threshold, and a majority of them, I think it was about 13 of the 20, were at above the 32 percentile mark. That included areas that aren't just the traditional places that we consider unaffordable. That included Los Angeles, that included the San Francisco Bay Area, yes, but it also included smaller communities, more inland in our state. It included places like Sacramento, which has become increasingly one of the most unaffordable places to live in the state in just the last 5 years. And so again, these issues of affordability and homelessness are intimately linked. And of course, these issues then have a massive impact on all of us, whether we're renters or homeowners. For renters, the issue is obvious. If you cannot pay your rent, you cannot afford to stay in your home. If, on the other hand, you are a homeowner, we know that there is a huge financial impact or fiscal impact as a result of the growing problem of homelessness on our streets. The average homeless person who is chronically homeless costs the state of California something like $35,000 to $45,000 per year per chronically homeless person. And given the fact that we're talking that there are tens of thousands of people who are chronically homeless, this means that a significant proportion, a significant amount of money is being spent on failure, right? To be able to address homelessness after it has happened. And so this behooves all of us as taxpayers, as homeowners, and absolutely as renters to get ahead of the issue before it becomes unmanageable. What Prop 21 does, simply put, is it puts an extra tool in the armament of local communities. Some cities, just quite frankly, need to be able to do more to arrest the growth in rents, to be able to expand renter protections and rent control in those jurisdictions. While we also know that others might not, other jurisdictions might not have to do that. Prop 21 gives us that flexibility to decide that. It gives us the flexibility to say, we need to implement more, again, renter protections. We need to be able to implement rent control on more units. At the same time, though, it does say, or it gives that flexibility to local communities to say, you know, this isn't something for us. Prop 21 is not a one-size-fits-all solution by any stretch of the imagination. But we do know that elected officials and, you know, different local governments have asked for more flexibility and they have not received it. As an example, now during the COVID-19 pandemic, we know that 5.2 million renters are on the firing line for an eviction. That is according to the Aspen Institute. Those 5.2 million renters were people who were already suffering from the housing crisis. These are people who were already paying too much money on their rent. And so, you know, I ask all of our viewers today to ask themselves, if you think that the homelessness crisis in California looks bad now, what do you think it'll look like when 5.2 million people get evicted from their homes? In LA County alone, a study by UCLA Luskin Institute showed that about 365,000 renter households, not just renters, but households, would be losing their homes in the coming months. A third of those households would experience homelessness. That is itself twice as large as the total number of people who are currently homeless on the streets of Los Angeles now. And so I say to folks, what do we think this state will look like if we allow 5.2 million people to be evicted, if we continue to allow these rent increases to continue to impact our communities the way that they are? And so again, Prop 21 returns that local power to us. We know as well that our local governments have asked for these tools. In May of this year, the Los Angeles City Council requested the support of the state to be able to implement a blanket moratorium on rent increases, at least for the duration of the economic crisis. We know that we're facing the deepest recession this state has faced in about 90 years. We know that unemployment is through the roof. We know that a lot of the service industry, which is obviously the most important sector of the economy statewide, has been deeply impacted by COVID-19. And so we know that we need more protections for people to ensure that they can stay in their homes. Sadly, a restriction at the state level prevents our local communities from having those tools in their arsenal. Sadly, state law since the 1990s has basically said to our cities, you cannot take more actions to support your residents, and in particular, your renter residents. And of course, in cities like LA, where I come from, that is a huge impact. That is a huge problem. It is a huge problem when 64% of the residents of Los Angeles are renters, and yet we do not afford them the rights and protections that they need to stop them from unjust increases in their rents. Or again, in the situation that we have now, don't allow our city council to implement the sort of tools that they need to respond to an emergency. And so the city council in May of this year asked for the lifting of restrictions similar to our own initiative, asking the state governor, the governor and the legislature to lift restrictions on rent control and renter protections so that they could protect more people. And sadly, you know, the governor and the state legislature did not respond to that request. Prop 21 is a response to that request. Prop 21 would give, again, our cities and counties the tools that they need to be able to respond to this crisis, but also to respond to the growing and already acute housing crisis that our state was facing before COVID-19. Prop 21 was needed before COVID-19, but Prop 21 is vital now that we are experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic. Roger, I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to address your folks here about Prop 21, and thank you so much.
All right, thanks for being here. If people want to find out more about you or your program, where do they go? Do you have a website?
Absolutely. They can go to yeson21ca.org. Yeson21ca.org.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.